Commodore 64, my very first home computer, the system that means the most to me due to that thing called nostalgia. The Commodore 64 was introduced in January 1982 by Commodore International in all of its 8-bit glory, and I loved it. However, unlike consoles like the Sega Master System and the Nintendo Entertainment System, most of the games that I had came on tape and not on a cartridge, although I did have a couple. This of course meant long loading times, and I really hated long loading times. But worse than that, multi-load games with even more loading times. At the time, disk drives cost as much as the Commodore 64, so that wasn't an option, but I hated loading times so much that I used to play games that were loaded in one single go. These are the games that I used to love playing back in the day that were single loads in one go. I hope you enjoy them.
Another visitor. Stay a while. Stay forever.
Impossible Mission is a video game originally written for the Commodore 64 by Dennis Caswell and published by Epyx in 1984. The game features a variety of gameplay mechanics from platform and adventure games and includes digitized speech. Impossible Mission, which casts the player in the role of a secret agent infiltrating an enemy stronghold, is widely considered as one of the best games for several platforms. The player races against the clock to reassemble and decrypt the password in Atom Bender's control room while avoiding deadly robots. Password pieces are found by searching furniture in the rooms. When searching, the player can also reset all movable platforms and freeze enemy robots for a limited time. The player has 6 hours of game time to collect 36 puzzle pieces. Every time the player dies, 10 minutes are deducted from the total time. Again, this is yet another that I've never completed. After recently reviewing this game in my Commodore Classics series, I remembered just how much I absolutely loved this little racer. It's such a cute, awesome, addictive game, so much fun in 2 or even 3 player mode. Power Drift is a kart racing game released in the arcades by Sega in 1988. More technologically advanced than Sega's earlier 2.5D racing games like Hang On and Outrun, in Power Drift the entire world and track consisted of sprites. It was subsequently ported to various home computers in Europe by Activision in 1989, followed by a PC Engine port published in Japan by Amisk Ace in 1990. Power Drift was ported to the Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64, MSX, Amiga, Atari ST, MS-DOS, ZX Spectrum. All the home computer versions were done by Activision. As you can see by the Commodore 64 version, this was one of our better racing games. The ZX Spectrum port knocked the long-standing Robocop from the top of the UK sales in 1989. Wizball is a shoot-'em-up written by John Hare and Chris Yates, who together formed Sensible Software and released in 1987 originally for the Commodore 64 and later that year for the ZX Spectrum and the Amstrad CPC. Versions for the Amiga and Atari ST were released in the following year. Wizball was also ported to the IBM PC compatibles and the French Thomson M05 8-bit computer. Wizball is set in the once colourful realms of Wizworld, where the evil Zack has stolen all the colour, making it dull and grey. It is up to Wiz and his cat Nifter to restore its former brilliance as Wizball and Catalite. Uridium, which was released on the Les as The Last Starfighter, is a science fiction side-scrolling shoot-'em-up originally designed by Andrew Braybrooke for the Commodore 64 and later ported to other 8-bit machines. It consists of 15 levels, each named after a metal element, with the last level being called Uridium, a fictional metallic element not to be confused with the real metallic element, Iridium. The manual quotes Robert Orchard, who invented the name, as saying, "I really thought it existed." Bruce Lee is a platform game written by Ron J. Fortier for the Atari 8-bit family and published in 1984 by Datasoft. The graphics are by Kelly Day and music by John A. Fitzpatrick. The player takes the role of Bruce Lee, while the second player controls either Yamo or alternates with player 1 for control of Bruce Lee. The Commodore 64 and Apple II versions were released in the same year. The game was converted to the ZX Spectrum and the Amstrad CPC and published by US Gold. The The plot involves the eponymous martial artist advancing from chamber to chamber in a wizard's tower, seeking to claim infinite wealth and the secret of immortality. There are 20 chambers, each represented by a single screen with platforms and ladders. To progress, the player must collect a number of lanterns suspended from various points in the chamber. International Karate Plus, or IK Plus, is a fighting game written by Archie McLean and published in 1987 by System 3 for the Commodore 64, Amstrad CPC and ZX Spectrum. It is a successor to International Karate, released in 1985. Activision published the Commodore 64 version in the US as Chop and Drop. The three characters fight each other on a beach, trying to be the first to score 6 points. After every 2 rounds there is a bonus game, which is either deflecting bouncing balls or kicking away bombs. The Commodore 64 version of the game only has the ball bouncing bonus game and not the bomb bonus game. Into the Eagle's Nest is a game developed by Pandora and published for the Commodore 64 in 1987. The player character is an allied soldier whose orders are to infiltrate a top secret Nazi fortress called the Eagle's Nest, which consists of 4 castles. Rescue 3 allied saboteurs being held in there, save our treasures and the Nazis have stolen, and destroy the nest with explosives. Nazis require 2 well-placed shots to eliminate, and Nazis sitting at a table only require 1 well-placed shot. The player can sustain up to 50 shots from enemy soldiers. While inside the castle, the player finds crates which may contain art objects or explosives. The player can also find ammunition dumps, first aid kits and goods in the castle. Commando was a vertical scrolling run and gun shooter released by Capcom for the arcades in 1985. Commando was a critical and commercial success, becoming one of the highest grossing arcade video games of 1985 and one of the best selling home video games of 1986. The Commodore 64's ports theme, a more complex and extended version of the arcade music, was created in less than 12 hours by the legend Rob Hubbard. He started working on it late at night, worked on it through the night, took one listen to the original arcade version and started working on the Commodore 64. By the time everyone arrived at 8 o'clock in the morning, I had loaded the main tune onto every Commodore 64 in the building. I got my check and was on my way home on the train by 10 AM. This is without doubt my most favourite music on the Commodore 64. In fact, I love it so much I use it on my intro, another version updated by Rob Hubbard himself. Stunt Car Racer, published as Stunt Track Racer in the United States, is a racing game developed by Jeff Crammond. It was published in 1989 by Microprose under the Microstyle and Micropro labels in the United Kingdom and in the United States respectively. The game differs from other racing games in that the races take place on an elevated racetrack with nothing to stop the player from accidentally driving off the side. Most racetracks in the game have gaps in them which the players can fall into. If this occurs, then the player's vehicle is hoisted back into the track by a knee-by crane, costing valuable time. Turbo can also be used to make the car go faster, but it can only be used for a limited amount of time in each race. So, those were the games I used to love playing that were loaded in one go. I hope you enjoyed them. But my question is this: what single load games did you play, if any? For future Commodore 64 content, please consider subscribing to my channel, and until next time, goodbye.